is John Kohler with OKRaw.com. Today we're outside my local Whole Foods market, and we're going to go inside the Whole Foods market and check out the raw food section. So once we're in the raw food section, we're going to check out one thing, the raw cacao. Raw cacao comes in powder, nibs, or whole beans, and it's very controversial. So let's come inside and check it out. So we're here at the raw food section at the Whole Foods. You can see the raw foods, and they have all these different processed raw food products. But we're going to look down here at the cacao today. So these are the cacao beans. They come in a couple different ways. Cacao beans are the whole beans, and then you can get the cacao nibs, which are basically the beans that are broken up. So you could also get the cacao powder, which is basically just powdered up beans. In addition, and in most cases, you know, when you do buy the beans, you usually just process them. Most people just don't eat the beans straight. And if you process them, they're into something like this, cacao sweet nibs. So these have the cacao nibs with some sugar and some cacao liqueur. So in most cases, you know, people are eating cacao, you know, not just the cacao alone, but also with sweeteners, you know, and the cacao itself is actually high in fat, so high fat and then high in sugar. They usually use things like agave or coconut crystals, which I don't know, they say is raw, or other sweeteners, basically, which in my opinion are not so good for us either. So next, let's share some research I've done with cacao and the straight facts about its nutritional content. All right, so now we're sitting down and we're going to talk more about cacao, and this is the cacao powder, and this is the cacao nibs. Once again, we just saw these downstairs, and you know, we're going to talk about some of the straight facts about cacao. Now, there are many videos on YouTube that talk about some of the effects of cacao and, you know, this and that hearsay, but you know, primarily we're going to go over some of the scientific data regarding the cacaos today. So the first thing I'd like to point out is that, you know, many people and many websites may say that cacao is really high in magnesium, and it's like the #1 magnesium food. Now, you know, based on my research, I haven't found this to be entirely accurate. You can check the USDA nutrition database, and they don't even have cacao listed in there, but you know, I have to use some kind of standard for determining how much kind of nutrient is in cacao. So we could use cocoa, which is basically heat processed cacao. So you could say, oh, maybe the minerals change when it's raw. Well, I don't know, heating up minerals, I don't know if they change or not. But in any case, based on the USDA information, and also this is what many raw websites quote, that it has, you know, the most magnesium, and magnesium is really important for us. And yes, I'm not disputing that magnesium is an important nutrient, but you know, cacao is not necessarily the highest source. So here's some of the research I've done at the USDA database. You can see here I've printed out the nutrition facts for many different items, from rice bran, wheat bran, cocoa powder, spice, coriander dried, chives dried, spearmint dried, flax seeds, sesame seeds, Brazil nuts, almonds, spirulina, and even sunflower seeds. And you know, if you don't want to look at all the data, here's it pretty much summed up. This is magnesium per 100 grams of the specific food. In the first case, we have rice bran. So for 100 grams of rice bran, there's 781 milligrams of magnesium. For coriander leaf dried, that's also called cilantro, 694 milligrams per 100 grams. For dried chives, it's 640 milligrams per 100 grams. For wheat bran, 611 milligrams per 100 grams. Hey, wait a minute, I thought if cacao had all these, you know, all this magnesium, it'd be at the top of the list. Well, you know, we're still going. We're not even to cacao yet. Next, we have spearmint dried, has 602 milligrams per 100 grams. And next, we have cocoa powder or cacao powder with 499 milligrams per 100 grams. Other things that also have high magnesium: flax seeds, 392 milligrams per 100 grams. Brazil nuts, 376 milligrams per 100 grams. So you could easily see that cacao is not like the highest on the planet in magnesium. There's other foods that easily have more magnesium. So if you're eating your cacao and you think you're getting a high levels of magnesium, you know, forget it, you're not. You know, it'd be far better to eat some of these other foods like the rice bran or even coriander, cilantro. Fresh cilantro, dried cilantro is actually a better source of magnesium than the cacao powder. It's also a lot healthier in my opinion. So another thing they say about cacao is that it's high in antioxidants, and they quote what's called the ORAC value. Now the ORAC value is basically they take a food and they measure it in a test tube how much basically antioxidant capability it has. So once again, this is all in test tubes. And how does this relate to us as people when we eat these foods in the real world? Does it really have, and does that high ORAC value translate to a high antioxidant value to us? I mean, I don't know, many scientists don't know, and the answer is, frankly, we don't know. Although it does have a high test tube amount, doesn't mean that in our bodies it's gonna work the same way, because our bodies has to digest, process it, and absorb the nutrient, and then who knows how it works. To my knowledge, they haven't done any studies on this. So once again, they say cacao's highest in ORAC. Well, once again, I've done some research. We have a table right here. This is an ORAC database, food rank per, once again, 100 grams of the food. Top of the list, hey, it's not cacao. It's cloves, which are ground up. And that's a spice, obviously, 314,448 on the ORAC value. Next, we have another spice, cinnamon, ground cinnamon. It's over 250,000 on the ORAC table. Next, we have spices, oregano, dried oregano. That's about 200,000 on the ORAC value. So next we have turmeric, ground up, and that's over 150,000 on the ORAC database. And next, finally, we get down to cocoa or cacao powder, and that looks like it's 80,000. So even turmeric has about double the amount of antioxidants as the cacao powder, and even oregano. So start eating your oregano fresh and dried for some antioxidants instead of some exotic superfood powder that comes from far off lands. So once again, we've debunked the myth that cacao is highest in antioxidants. We've also debunked that cacao is highest in magnesium. So some people say that cacao is also high in catechins. So let's take a look. I've done some more research online to find out the catechins in cacao per 100 grams, once again. And here it is right here. Chocolate per 100 grams has 46 to 61 catechins per 100 grams. And actually looking at this chart, that is actually one of the highest, except for apples have 10 to 43 catechins, and the beans have 35 to 55 catechins. But other foods, red raspberries, 2 to 48 catechins, strawberries, 2 to 50 catechins, green tea even has 10 to 80 catechins per 100 grams of the food. Green tea may have more catechins than the cacao. And once again, in America, we always think more is better, more money is better, the bigger car is better. More, if a little of something's good, then more is better. Well, more isn't always better. How do you know that we need this many catechins or this many antioxidants? What I like to look to is look to nature for answers. Nature has provided all the foods on this earth and on this planet for us to eat, like strawberries and apples and things in their whole natural form that taste good to us, and we could eat a lot of in one sitting. Whereas, for example, the cacao nibs or the whole beans, literally they're beans or they're seeds of a plant. Why do you think nature put, for the most part, a lot of the seeds on the planet? Well, nature didn't put these seeds on the planet for us to eat, because if we ate all the seeds of all the plants, then there'd be no more plants. That plant wouldn't grow. The seeds are in the plant for it to reproduce, and there are also, in my opinion, some toxins contained in seeds. It's common knowledge that apple seeds contain toxins like cyanide. So you don't eat a lot of apple seeds, because if you do, there won't be any more apple trees, but also it's poisonous. Same thing with cacao. On the cacao, just a few nibs, many animals can lose their life because of cacao. Like, you wouldn't want to feed cacao to your dog. And even us, we don't want to eat a lot of cacao, because a lot of cacao, we wouldn't actually survive. We wouldn't be able to detoxify that amount of cacao. So there's toxins in cacao such as theobromine and oxalic acid. So theobromine affects our nervous system and is not necessarily too good. Maybe they relate it to something like caffeine in coffee, makes you, basically speeds you up. And there's even some friends that I have that have eaten too much cacao, and basically they've messed up their adrenals, and they burnt out their adrenals, because your whole body has to basically speed up, and you're amped up to try to basically get that stuff out of you. It's like when I was in college and I used to drink a Jolt Cola, to study for my test, I'd be shaking, and if I have cacao today, I'll start shaking. Some people also get headaches and other side effects, or actually other effects, not necessarily side effects, they're effects from the cacao. I could eat all the cherries I want, I could eat all the strawberries I want, and I'll never get a headache unless they're, not organic or sprayed with pesticides or something. So if you eat cacao on a regular basis, you're gonna build all that toxicity up in your body. On the oxalic acid does interfere with calcium absorption, and we are, one of the primary minerals that we need is calcium. All our bones are made of calcium. Calcium is a pH buffer, and cacao could basically limit the absorption of your calcium because of that oxalic acid. Once again, oxalic acid are in plants and in nature, so that animals basically don't eat too much of that plant or that seed, because then the plant wouldn't be able to then reproduce and make more plants. So the last thing I'm going to talk about today is some published work that was published in a journal. It's published in the Archive of Internal Medicine, volume 170, page 699, that confirms that people with depression eat more cacao, or chocolate. So figured out why would people with depression eat more cacao? Maybe because cacao is a drug and people are self-medicating. They get depressed, they feel bad, they eat cacao, then they feel good. But guess what? The cacao effect wears off, then they feel bad again, then they eat more cacao and they feel good. I mean, that's a possibility. I mean, I don't know, but this journal basically has a published study that shows that people that are depressed eat more cacao. So maybe if you're eating a lot of the cacao, maybe you're chronically depressed. Maybe you should deal with the root of your depression, which, is, I don't know what it is, and I don't know how to deal with it, but you should deal with the root of your depression and not treat it with basically a food that is being used as a drug. So that's what I have to say today about cacao. Hopefully this has opened your eyes and enlightened you to some of the facts about cacao. Now, once again, I encourage people to do what's right for them. I'm not going to tell you how to live your life or what to eat, what not to eat. But in my opinion, cacao should not be consumed on a daily basis. Now, if you want to use it as a drug, like to stay awake when you're driving home one late night, use a little bit here and there, that could be fine. If you want to use a couple beans here and there, that could be fine. The other thing I don't like about cacao is that it's actually very high in fat. Most of the calories come from fat. So if you're on a low-fat diet, eating a couple cacao nibs, that's going to throw your low-fat diet out the window. So if you are going to eat cacao, I would definitely recommend no more than a few, like 2 or 3 beans a day. Some people are pouring handfuls in their smoothies, handfuls into this, and they're eating so much cacao. And it's best to eat fresh fruits and vegetables, and that should be the basis of a raw foods diet, not all this cacao. And if you want a good cacao substitute, check out carob. Raw carob pods are, in my opinion, nature's chocolate on a tree. I have other videos on carob, picking carob fresh off the tree and sharing with you guys how to get fresh carob, also comparing cacao to carob. Once again, this is John Kohler with OKRaw.com. We'll see you next time, and keep eating your fresh fruits and vegetables. They're good stuff.